This video is brought to you by Eureka Ergonomic and their new Curio display cabinet. I just got one, so I finally have a place to properly show off my favorite collectibles, with the adjustable LED lighting making all the difference. Click the link below to check it out for yourself, or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, let me begin by saying I know why you're here. You want to hear me cover the day before, arguably the biggest shit show of 2023, a year that was already pretty stacked with shit shows. Here's the truth though, as I was writing that block, I got up to like 3,000 words just on that, and I wasn't even close to done. This show, by the way, is 6,000 words every week, so I had a choice. Either let that story drown out every other piece of news this week, or make that its own video, complete with some actual hands-on impressions of the game, and also do this news show. So I chose the latter. I promise you I am going to cover the day before in the next day or two, because it's just too much fun not to. But in this episode, I'm going to ask for a little bit of your patience while we cover all of the other stuff that's going on in the industry this week. There's some really interesting stuff happening, and I didn't want to let these fucking scammers overshadow all of that with their bullshit. I hope that's okay with y'all. I hope y'all is okay with y'all. I'm not American, but I like to try it on every now and then. Let me know in the comments below what you think. This is This Week in Video Games, and here comes the news.
But fun fact, my speech was actually longer than this year's Call of Duty campaign.
It was the joke heard around the room, and it was one of the few moments of genuine humanity and soul on display in what turned out to be an overly corporatized, dispassionate, and impersonal event. I'm talking, of course, about the Game the Game Awards 2023. Chris Judge's gag was pregnant with meaning. He had, of course, the year before, delivered an 8-minute long barn burner. Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't the barn burning, it was the temperature in and around Jeff Keighley's aura, as he slowly went thermonuclear at the sight of Judge upsetting his precious run sheet. To be fair, Judge did take the piss a little, or maybe a lot, but it was a deeply human speech that we will all remember. I'm sorry if that gets in the way of the gacha game commercials, but sometimes you just gotta let a man speak. Unfortunately, Jeff wasn't about to let anyone stage a repeat of that this year, and as such, he and his team pre-briefed award nominees, instructing them that if they won, they had a tight 30 seconds to give their speech and get off the stage before the music would start playing them off. The first time this music came on was during Judge's speech, and it was a joke. The second time it came on, it was not. Neil Newbon, the voice of Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3, won the award for Best Performance, and here's how the back end of his speech went.
One thing I will say, please, if that's okay, the community has reached out to so many of us at Larian and said they were seen and they were represented by this game when they lost hope, they felt isolated, they felt alone, and this game brought them together and gave them something to push through to help them all. And to you, I want to say thank you so much for seeing us. Appreciate it. You're not alone in this. None of us are. Thank you.
Kinda sucks, right? I mean, it kinda seems like he was saying something important, something worth listening to, something that reaches out to people who don't usually get a voice and who aren't often seen. And, you know, that message was cut short so we could play the third Fortnite trailer for the night, or whatever it was. I don't fucking know. It got so bad that even Jeff Keighley had to admit that he messed up. After the ceremony, he tweeted the following, quote, "By the way, I do agree that music was played too fast for award winners this year, and I asked our team to relax that rule as the show went on. While no one was actually cut off, it's something to address going forward," end quote. And it's true that the requirement was relaxed, but it didn't stop award winners from being unceremoniously told to wrap it up. In an image that's gone viral since the show, the teleprompter has come to symbolize what this award show was all about. Lip service to game makers, lightning fast acceptance speeches, winners being carted off so quickly it felt like each of them rushed the stage like that rabbi kid. Cut back to commercial, to commercial, to commercial. If I sound overly cynical about this, I would remind you that I'm actually not like this when it comes to the Game Awards usually. They've always been imperfect, but I've usually been quite sympathetic to the challenges of making these events happen. They are very expensive, high production value showcases, and Jeff has to sell ads to make these events possible. Fair play, I say, and genuinely congratulations to him for what he does. But this year, the balance was really, really bad. For me, the tipping point was the best indie category. This is important because indie games are often the most creative, the hardest to make, and the most inspiring games that can release in a given year. Jeff Keighley himself was banging on about how important it is to use the Game Awards to highlight indie games, so why then, when it came to award the best indie game gong, was the winner announced in an offstage area where Sea of Stars director Terry Boulanger couldn't actually accept the award on behalf of his team and say his piece. This is a very passionate man, mind you. We interviewed him on the FPS podcast, and he is legitimately inspiring. I guarantee you that if he'd stood up that night, he'd have said something that you would have remembered. But he didn't get the chance to do that because we were racing to get back to the trailer profiling the next Honkai Star Rail update or some shit. There were other categories similarly overlooked. Best action game to FromSoft for Armored Core, Best Art Direction to Remedy for Alan Wake 2, Best Community to Larian for Baldur's Gate 3, Best Score. Soken wrote the music for Final Fantasy XVI from his hospital bed while he was going through chemo, and while he was also writing music for another game, Final Fantasy XIV. You mean to tell me that that man or someone representing him shouldn't have had the chance to stand up and have his moment? Look, to be clear, I don't think we're too far from what it needs to be. Just a few less ads and a few more awards handed out, a bit more time to each speaker. Do that and I think you got yourself one hell of an award show. But when you get that stuff wrong, it really sours the whole event. And given how much backlash we've seen on social media, I'm sure Jeff and his team are going to have to respond and make some big changes to the balance next year. But yes, outside of that, most of the games we expected to win the things won the things. Best debut indie went to the fantastic Cocoon, Games for Impact went to the delightful Tchia, audio design was a nice one since it went to Hi-Fi Rush, a game that deserved many a gong, so it was nice to see it get at least one. Best narrative went to Alan Wake 2, as well as best game direction, while Starfield won the award for best Nakey Jakey video of 2023. Love that exercise ball. Game of the year was unsurprisingly Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, there was never really any doubt, was there? Maybe if you hadn't played it, but if you'd come close to its orbit or even just met anyone who'd played it, you could tell from their incessant yammering about it that Larian had clearly pulled off a generational feat, one that well and truly rocked the industry in all the best ways. I got to meet Swen for the second time. The first time was back in 2018 in a men's room. We didn't shake hands or anything, we did the nod thing, you know, but we definitely had a moment. It's an incredible success story for him and his team, a bunch of hardcore CRPG nerds who believed that this genre still had life in it, far more than anyone else could see. They bet the house on this vision, hell, they bet the shirt on their back, and it paid off so handsomely. A wonderful fairy tale ending for our knight in shining armor. Alright, so now that we've dealt with those pesky, bothersome award winners, let's get down to the real reason this show exists, the ads. There were some good ads this year, by the way, let me tell you. Pre-show, the biggest standout was Windblown, the next thing from Motion Twin, the team behind the astoundingly good Dead Cells. Dead Cells was not only a breakout hit at launch, but it's gone on to be supported and updated extensively over the years, continuing to maintain its position as one of the best roguelites on the market. Windblown is also carrying that roguelike tradition, but obviously with an all-new setting, perspective, art style, and combat framework. Plus, it's co-op. Literally zero things I don't love about this, and given the track record of the team behind it, I think it's perfectly reasonable to have very high hopes. No date for it yet, but it will launch into early access sometime next year. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons was Joseph Faris's breakout game well before he'd go on to win Game of the Year for It Takes Two. Brothers is getting a remake, which is lovely because I never actually played the first one, so this will be a great excuse. Hey, take a look at this one. This is No Rest for the Wicked, and it's the next thing from Moon Studios, makers of the Ori games. This is an all-new IP for them and combines their signature hand-drawn art style with an isometric RPG fantasy setting. Definitely heard a few awestruck gasps in the crowd when this trailer played. No date for this one yet, but it is out sometime next year. There was a Jurassic Park game revealed called Survival. It seems to just be replaying the moments we remember from the first movie without adding anything to them, so you can put me in the skeptical column for this one. We've got to look at Akumi Nakamura's debut game from her newly minted studio. According to Jeff, they don't actually have a publisher yet, so I guess this was kind of one big advertisement for her. I suspect she won't struggle to find support given how good all of this looks. One of the best reveals was this, Tales of Kenzera Zhao. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it was introed by this guy, Abubakar Salim, who told a very moving story about the way that video games connected he and his late father, and that this game is in dedication to him. Difficult not to be at least a little bit affected by seeing him up there, plus the game looks great. There was of course that infamous Kojima thing where he introed his new game OD without actually showing anything, and he and Jordan Peele just kind of jerked each other off for 6 minutes. Now listen, I'm as big a Kojima simp as you'll ever meet, but I won't lie, this section kind of sucked. If you're going to reveal a game, then show me some game, not show me some actors doing facial capture. I'm sure I'll love it when I get to play it eventually or see some of it, but for now, I kind of just wish this segment didn't go down quite the way that it did. One of the best moments of the show was when Sean Murray got up there to debut his new game, Light No Fire. It was the first time he debuted a new thing since he got completely carried away debuting the last thing. We were all on the edge of our seats hoping history wouldn't repeat itself, but then he said this.
Another game. Yeah, something very different, something maybe more ambitious.
I shit you not, when he said this, I was in the audience and everyone around me was like, oh my god, did he just say that? He would later go on to make self-deprecating tweets about his penchant for overpromising, to which the official Cyberpunk Twitter handle responded, quote, "You can always fix it later. Smiling face with open mouth and cold sweat emoji," end quote. Let me know what you think about that joke in the comment section below. There were a few shadow drops during the show, like the finals, which debuted and has already blown past 250,000 current players on Steam. I'm playing it for myself and it totally rules. Looking forward to talking more about it soon. We got some God of War Ragnarok DLC from out of nowhere and it's dropping very soon, like today, it's out. It's more focused on combat than story, which makes sense given that the storyline was well and truly wrapped up in the main game. But Sony Santa Monica don't half-ass anything, so I'm sure this will be great. Ready or Not is an excellent tactical shooter that's been in early access for a while now and will hit 1.0 tomorrow. Space Marine 2 finally got an official release date and it's September 9th next year, so still a chunky wait for that one. And Ubisoft's utterly cursed Skull and Bones finally has another release date, and this one looks to be for real this time. February 16th next year, sandwiched in an absolutely massive month of releases. The best possible conditions for a game that really does need all the help it can get. 3 big announcements to take us home. The first was Sega's new groove, which is really their old groove, which is more than fine with me because old school Sega ruled. They showcased a trailer that revealed reboots for 5 iconic franchises: Crazy Taxi, Golden Axe, Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, and Streets of Rage. I mean, yes, absolutely yes to all of this, but Sega have had a very patchy release history for the past 2 decades, so we've got to make sure we keep our hype in check on all this. Capcom finally pulled the curtain off Monster Hunter Wilds, follow-up to the breakout smash hit Monster Hunter World that put the game firmly in the mainstream in the West. This time it looks like we can carry 2 weapons at once, and if you know anything about Monster Hunter, you would know that is a very big deal. Biggest surprise of this trailer though was the release date, as various leaks and hints from Capcom HQ put this at a Q1 2024 release. To see this announced as a 2025 release was a genuine shock, but hey, if that's how long they say it's going to take, then fair enough, can't argue with that. I saved the best for last, or at least I think it was the best, certainly the most surprising. We crop in on a Parisian barber nervously giving a man the full service. When shit suddenly gets real, fangs come out, swords get unsheathed, and boom, a Blade game being made by none other than Arcane Studios' Leon. Now, apparently some industry people knew about this, but I had no idea, and I would have bet huge amounts of money that this wouldn't have been true, as the recent Xbox leak published Bethesda's upcoming projects and listed Dishonored 3 on there. So we were all convinced that Dishonored 3 was what Arcane Leon were cooking next, and we all got debated. The spin puts Blade in a stylized polyglot rendition of Paris, and it maintains Arcane's signature art style and aesthetic. It just looks super cool. One of the reasons I liked but didn't love Spider-Man 2 was because it was pretty safe. We've seen many of the superhero stories already, which is why we're getting a little over them. But this character, this angle, this setting, this studio, it all feels totally fresh and I'm super keen for it. But don't expect it anytime soon because word on the street is that it's still very early in development. So yeah, cool those jets for a bit. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the Game Ads 2023. Like I said, I don't think it was a train wreck by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think Jeff and his team could have struck a much better balance between recognition and marketing, especially in a year where some 9,000 developers have lost their jobs. That's right, that is a real number, and it just keeps growing. Like this year when Embracer Group did the thing they said they'd do, close Free Radical Design. Embracer had reformed that studio to work on a reboot of the Time Splitters franchise, but 30 days ago they provided notice that they may close the studio, a requirement of UK law. There was a report from Videogames Chronicle earlier this week that said the closure had been confirmed, but Embracer then denied that, only to then confirm the closure a few days later. The closure has resulted in some 80 people losing their jobs just in time for Christmas, and all because Embracer Group took on an obscene amount of debt when money was cheap and they couldn't get bailed out by the Saudis. Now, hundreds of developers across their network of studios are out of the job, with the promise of many more to follow, as Embracer have said that we should expect more cuts. It's a story from which we experienced the briefest of reprieves when this week Microsoft announced that it was making some of their contract staff a mix of temporary and full-time employees, all of whom would be unionized and would get pay increases of varying amounts. The staff were contracting into Bethesda to do QA work, but now they'll get a shiny new Bethesda employee badge and a union card. They also get a free copy of Starfield, which is the game they were working on as contractors. You gotta wonder if some of the staff are like, I'm good, thanks. I don't know how many people want to play a game after having worked QA on it for like 12 months to 2 years, especially Starfield. Were they the ones exploring all those planets? They'll be like, yep, I can confirm there's absolutely nothing to do on this planet, tick. And Todd will be like, perfect, ship it. Speaking of Starfield, if you were waiting for the modders to get in there and fix it, it looks like you're going to be waiting a little bit longer. This week, the developer behind the famous Skyrim Together multiplayer mod decided to down tools on the equivalent mod for Starfield. Their reasoning hits pretty hard. Quote, I didn't realize this until after I actually started playing this damn game a week after launch. The game is boring, bland, and the main draw of Bethesda games, exploration in a lively and handcrafted world, was completely gone. Anyways, everyone already knows this. Most people agree there's no need to further repeat the point. Just read any of the dozens of reviews online. That said, I won't be continuing development on Starfield Together. I'm not going to put my heart and soul into a mod for a game as mediocre as this, end quote. Pretty brutal, but far from a fringe opinion at this point. Luckily though, just today, Bethesda have announced that they're looking to continue to add new things to Starfield. In a Reddit post, a Bethesda rep said, quote, we're also hard at work on many new features you asked for, from city maps to mod support to all new ways of traveling. Stay tuned. These will be rolling out with a regular cadence of fixes and updates we expect to have roughly every 6 weeks, end quote. The promise of new ways of traveling feels particularly important, as one of the biggest complaints about Starfield is that there's no vehicles to use when you're on the planets. Seems like a pretty big oversight for a game that involves, exploring planets. The promise of mod support is not surprising because Bethesda games have always been about their mods, but do watch the fine print on this one, because this week, and this is true, Bethesda just re-added paid mods to Skyrim. It's true, I feel like I had to read the headline 4 times before it registered, but it's definitely happening. To be fair, it was sort of already happening, but in a much more controlled way that limited the overall mod economy in various ways. In a game update that dropped just last week though, Bethesda essentially threw wide the gates, allowing more people to apply for a status that would let them monetize mods, and relaxing the terms around which mods can and cannot be monetized. We are so back, baby, from horse armor to the paid mods version 1 to the Creation Club, and now this. Todd got them in there eventually. It was only a matter of time. As for how the community feels about this, they're pissed, but it's a different world today, and with user-generated content becoming a bedrock business model for games like Roblox and Fortnite, the lens through which we view paid mods is slightly different, providing just enough wiggle room for Bethesda to sneak this one in. This is a very fresh story, so it'll be interesting to see what long-term impacts it has on the game. I will keep you posted. A quick lightning round to finish off. Final Fantasy 16 got some new DLC. 2 DLC drops were announced at the Game Awards, and the first is available right now. The second one is out next year. If you were wondering if we might expect a 16 sequel or spin-off like Square used to do back in the day, then perish the thought, as Yoshi P has nixed the idea in a recent interview with Famitsu. He also spoke briefly about the PC port and said that you should consider an SSD a must, so consider yourself forewarned. Nintendo Live is an event that was meant to take place in Japan in January of next year, but it's been cancelled due to threats directed at Nintendo staff and venue organizers. Nintendo didn't provide any details, but Japan takes these sorts of threats very seriously due to a number of attacks in the past, so yeah, it's a real shame to see it go down this way. Speaking of events, E3 is dead. Again. For like the 85th time, but really, for real this time. Today, the ESA posted up a brief JPEG being like, thanks for the good times, peace. And that was it. The book closed on 20 years of history. The king is dead. Long live the king. In brighter news, Epic released LEGO Fortnite this week, and it hit over 2.3 million concurrent players. 2.3 million. Counter-Strike is the biggest game on Steam, and it peaks at an average of around 1.2 million. LEGO Fortnite is one game mode in Fortnite, which is absolutely nuts. But to be fair, I actually played LEGO Fortnite, and let me tell you, it is fantastic, and I really recommend checking it out because it genuinely rules. Speaking of Fortnite, Steven Datillo of Axios asked Epic if they were still trying to get Mario into Fortnite. Epic responded, quote, "I don't know what the word for like making diamonds is, ... end quote. I don't know the word either, my man, but I feel you, and you are totally right. It is never going to happen." So besides all that TGA craziness, what else got announced or delayed this week? Well, New Cycle is a game revealed just a little bit ago. It's an ambitious looking city builder set in the post-apocalypse, so the fate of humanity is in your hands as you start from lowly shack and build your way towards a sprawling metropolis. It looks great so long as you don't mind the color brown. This week it got a release date Jan 18th, exclusive to PC, and that is a full 1.0 release, not early access. Speaking of early access, United 1944 is a World War II shooter that releases into early access on December 12th. This isn't just a straight deathmatch, mind you. It's got weapon crafting, some base building stuff, perk trees, and more. The focus is 16v16 combat, but yeah, don't expect just the pew, pew, pew. One announcement from last week that I missed because there was just too much shit going on was the return of Firefight to Halo. For those unaware, Firefight is a horde-based PvE mode where you and up to 3 mates can just grind through increasingly numerous waves of Covenant forces, pushing as hard as you can until you're almost inevitably overwhelmed. This is a pretty beefy addition to Halo Infinite since it features 9 maps. If this were Bungie and those were PvP maps, it'd take them roughly 45 years to release the same amount of content. So hats off to 343, I guess. It's a drop that continues to edge Halo's player count ever upwards, sitting at around 8,000 concurrent players peak, up from a low of 2.7k just a year ago. 343 are putting in the work, and it's working. Always nice to see these sorts of comeback stories, especially for a franchise as important as Halo. Outcast: A New Beginning picks up where the series left off 24 years ago. It was one of the first open world games of its kind, but it never quite made the splash that other titles did. THQ Nordic are hoping that that'll change when they release A New Beginning on March 15th. It looks interesting, kind of like Xenoblade Chronicles, but with a jetpack, and it looks a little janky, but hey, I guess that's part of the charm. Finally, one delay announcement this week, and it's for Alone in the Dark. Now, this had already been delayed. It was due out in October before THQ Nordic looked at how stacked that month was and was like, nope. They moved it to the back end of January, but just this week they announced it'll arrive on March 22nd. They said they needed more time to polish and wanted to be able to enjoy their Christmas break stress-free. And I say, good on them. Much respect to any developer who puts quality time off in the holiday period over an arbitrary release date. Even better, they didn't delay it to February like every single other game. So thanks THQ. Only problem is now you're competing with Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin, so, you know, can't win them all. So what came out last week? Well, as you might recall, it was the last big week of the year when it came to both announcements and releases. Can't cover them all here, but let's knock over some of the more interesting ones. A Highland Song kicks us off. It's the narrative and musical-led game from the team behind the excellent 80 Days. Unsurprisingly, this is meant to be great too. Only 86 reviews up on Steam at the time of writing, but that's 96% very positive. Critics are also on board with this one, scoring at a strong 80 on OpenCritic. PC Gamer were one of the more critical reviews, scoring at a 71 and saying, quote, "A mismatched mix of genres grafted onto a moving, beautifully presented story," end quote. While God is a Geek speaks to that upper end of the spectrum with their 9 out of 10 score, quote, "A Highland Song is such a beautiful game whether you find its charm in the soundtrack, gorgeous visuals, or wonderful story," end quote. Disney Dreamlight Valley emerged from early access into 1.0 this week. Much like the early access period, people really liked it. It's sitting at mostly positive 79% on Steam. Critics at a similar spot with a strong 76 on OpenCritic, though those scores are mostly from the early access period. Still, the game appears to have only gotten better since then, so it looks like a pretty safe pickup if you or the little ones are down for some town life cozy game fun. Sonic Dream Team is that all-new Sonic game exclusive to the iOS via the Apple Arcade. It looked pretty cool, and it turns out it kind of is. Only a few reviews up for this one, but most of them are in that 8 out of 10 space, like IGN, who said of it, quote, "Superb level design and bite-sized missions make Sonic Dream Team one of the most fun, creative, and enjoyable 3D platformers I've played in a long time," end quote. That's some very high praise indeed. Maybe worth slinging Apple a few bucks to check this one out if you can't wait for it to arrive on other platforms in 6 to 12 months' time. The Anacrusis has been in early access for a little while now, and as I mentioned before, it hasn't made much of an impact. A real shame because it's from at least some of the people behind Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, but it just doesn't seem possessed of the same spark and imagination. Was hopeful that the 1.0 release might have changed that narrative, but apparently not. The game currently sits at a mixed 64% on Steam. IGN were really the only major outlet to review this one post 1.0, and they were not kind, scoring at a 4 out of 10 and saying, quote, The Anacrusis is a co-op shooter with remarkably few surprises and surprisingly unremarkable gunplay, end quote. If this one is going to go the distance, it seems like it's still going to need a lot more work. We'll see if the developer has the stomach and pockets for it. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader arrived on all platforms bar the Switch last week. It's just about as good as everyone expected it to be, which is to say, it's very good, though it's not without its issues. It's sitting at a very positive 83% on Steam, which is great. Critics are in a similar spot, scoring at a strong 77 on OpenCritic. There is a bit of spread in the reviews though. At the bottom end of the spectrum, you've got PC Gamer, who didn't love it, scoring at a 59 and saying, quote, Rogue Trader gets 40k's atmosphere right, but it's buggy and the rules are a mess, end quote. Reviews generally top out at the 8 out of 10 mark, like Gaming Bolt, who scored it an 8, saying, quote, paying extensive homage to the source material while weaving a compelling tale of its own, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader is an involving experience with fun combat and memorable characters, end quote. So there you go. I think thirsty Warhammer nerds were going to grab this one anyway, but most of the reviews point to it standing on its own 2 feet as a solid CRPG, so maybe check this one out if you're looking to fill that large Baldur's Gate 3 sized hole in your heart. Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Let me tell you, I'm glad to see this one landed so well. Massive have worked their asses off for years on this one, and with the stakes being what they were, it's nice to see they've landed this bird. Or Ikron, I guess I should say. It's not an incredible must-play game, but it's solid open-world fodder for most of us, and a must-play for die-hard Avatar fans out there. There are dozens of you. Austin is one of those people, and he really liked it. Link to his review below the like button. The broader commentariat were a mix of positive and ambivalent. It does sit at a fair 70 on OpenCritic with very little variation in the score. Almost every man and his die horse scored this one a 7 or an 8, like GameSpot, who scored it an 8 and said, quote, though it includes a lot of familiar open world elements, a minimalistic user experience, fun movement mechanics, and a gorgeous setting, make it a blast to explore Pandora, end quote. Press Start sum it up well with their 7 out of 10 review saying, quote, fans of the franchise will absolutely adore exploring everything this previously unexplored side of Pandora has to offer, just don't expect it to reinvent the wheel, end quote. A couple of VR and mixed reality titles now. First is Arizona Sunshine, which hit all VR platforms last week. It had big shoes to fill as the first game was one of the best VR showcases. The sequel doesn't seem to be hitting quite the same highs, but it's meant to be pretty good. It's sitting at a mostly positive 72% on Steam, with critics putting it slightly above that at a strong 77 on OpenCritic. Attack of the Fanboy scored at 3.5 stars and said, quote, you'll have a good enough time with Arizona Sunshine 2, but for the sequel to one of VR's greatest, it's hard to walk away without feeling like it could have been something more, end quote. Most of the other reviews are more favorable, tending to that 8 out of 10 mark, most of them commenting that this is a perfectly solid title so long as you aren't expecting anything too breakthrough or innovative. I'll tell you what is breakthrough though, Lego Brick Tales, which just arrived on the Meta Quest 3. Now I've actually been playing this one and it is fantastic. A truly brilliant showcase of what's possible with both VR and mixed reality. You're looking at these beautifully constructed Lego scenes, only these scenes are like in your lounge room. You can pick up the whole scene and put it on your coffee table should you choose. You can move in and see so much more detail up close. You become like some giant floating head in the sky, staring down at your Lego subjects being like, show me what you've got. And I haven't even got to the building. It feels like playing with Lego, it really does. You're just clicking stuff together and building different things however you please. It's fantastic, truly. I know Meta Quest 3 uptake isn't huge at the moment, but if you happen to have one of these headsets, you truly owe it to yourself to give it a look. It's wonderful, and I'm not the only one that thinks that, by the way. Critics put this at a strong 85 on OpenCritic, 8s, 9s, and firm handshakes across the board. Gaming Nexus wrote it up well when they said, quote, Lego Brick Tales VR pulls off an amazing trick, allowing you to play with gorgeous Lego sets floating around in your own home through the magic of mixed reality, detailed and beautiful while still being a fun and challenging game. I can't think of a better way to show off VR to stubborn non-believers. The potential of what is on display here is limitless, end quote. Cannot believe Lego shipped 2 bangers in 1 week. Good job, Lego. Keep it up. So what's coming out this week? Well, anime fighting fans, you guys are getting Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising for the PS4, 5, and PC. It's the same 2D fighter that the series has always been, only now it features the option for more simplified inputs, similar to what many modern fighters are offering these days, as well as an island lobby experience where you and some mates can mess around with Fall Guys style challenges. Looks cute, looks fun, and it arrives tomorrow. Do you watch all those terrible reality TV shows about fixing houses, stuffing them full of IKEA furniture, and then flipping them for an insane profit? Well, have I got the game for you. House Flipper 2 arrives for PC tomorrow. To be fair, the first one is actually really popular and has great reviews on Steam, so if home improvement is something that floats your boat, then this likely will too. Not for Broadcast is a really fascinating and award-winning game about policing information in real time. You're a producer working in the booth during live television, and it's your job to beep the swears and anything else the powers that be don't want heard. A truly unique premise that garnered a buttload of critical praise when it released last year, and tomorrow it's getting a PSVR 2 port. That port has been available on PC for a little while now. Palia is another one of those town life sim games. It had an open beta on PC a little while ago and met a pretty mixed reception, many people commenting that it was just kind of a little bit dull, a little lifeless, not adding much to the genre. Maybe that's changed since then, I don't know. Hard to find much chatter about it these days, but we'll surely see a little more coverage this week when the game arrives on Switch tomorrow. It is free to play. Speaking of Switch, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Hidden Treasures of Area Zero, the Indigo Disc DLC launches tomorrow. Damn man, Game Freak absolutely need to be banned from naming things. What the hell is that title? And finally, one more VR title to finish up on. Big week for VR actually. Asgard's Wrath 2 arrives exclusive to the Meta Quest 3 headset on the 15th. Now this is actually a pretty big deal because the first one was and is the preeminent VR RPG experience. It was a game built from the ground up for VR, so it wasn't a port of Fallout or Skyrim or whatever, and it was really ambitious for its time, offering a really involved melee combat system, cutting-edge visuals, and a campaign some 25 hours long. The sequel is promising to be bigger and better by every metric, especially since this is the flagship title for the Meta Quest 3 headset, with Meta literally bundling a free copy of it with every purchase of the headset. It's looking promising, and given that I've got one of these headsets, I'll certainly be checking it out when it drops later this week. There's one other game dropping this week, so put this on your radar. This is Trinity Fusion, and it's a Metroidvania roguelike from indie studio Angry Mob Games. It's actually been in early access since April of this year, and in that time it's managed to rack up 90% very positive reviews on Steam. I think if you take a look at this one, it's difficult to not be impressed by its different aspects. Visually, it's got a clean but striking sci-fi aesthetic with some fantastic lighting, particularly on the backgrounds. It's got a huge range of enemies to square off against, each of them so unique in their design, but most importantly, the combat looks legit. The option to fight both up close or at range, plenty of different abilities in the mix, and some absolutely fantastic animations making the whole thing look super smooth. And that's setting aside the roguelike elements which allow you to shape a build that will transform the way you play every single time. It really does look pretty great, and given how positive the early access reception has been, there's every reason to be hopeful that the team sticks the landing on this when it launches into 1.0 tomorrow. If you'd like to grab it or even just wishlist it for later, I've profiled it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and since we're in the middle of the month, there isn't a huge amount to report. Epic still have that Kaiju Brawler Gigabash on there, as well as Predecessor, the resurrected and repurposed Paragon, brought back to life by a dedicated team. As for what's next from Epic, it's a mystery, but let me tell you, when they list it as a mystery, it's usually a good thing, as Epic likes to keep their more exciting giveaways under wraps until the moment of release. Keep an eye out for that dropping soon, but don't worry, if you forget, this section ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Only other shout this week is for Prime Gaming, who are continuing their Bethesda giveaway run by handing out Deathloop, sort of free to anyone who has an Amazon Prime or Twitch Prime subscription. Deathloop is complicated. Not a great game in my view, but a legit Game of the Year contender for many others. Easily the most divisive title in Arcane's portfolio, and if you've been looking for a chance to make up your own mind about it, well, there it is. At the very least, you get to experience what this team made before they started working on Blade, and given how much connective tissue there is between all of their games, it'd be very interesting to see how much the classic Arcane formula Blade ends up inheriting. Our feel-good story for the week takes us back to the heady days of last week, when the GTA 6 trailer was loosed upon the world for all of its impressive visual spectacle and excellent characterization. There was one aspect of the trailer that really stood out, and that is the way it managed to perfectly capture the Floridian experience. Miami, the beaches, the cars, crocodiles in pools, twerking, crocodiles in 7-Elevens, more twerking. The whole thing felt like it was pulled straight from the real-life history of a state affectionately referred to as America's penis. Perhaps it was a little too close to reality though. Blink and you'll miss it, but at one moment in the trailer, this purple-haired gentleman appeared on screen. If he looks familiar, it's because he might, allegedly, be based on this actual man, lovingly dubbed Florida Joker after his mugshot went viral some years ago. Florida Joker happened to catch the trailer reveal, and he is none too happy about Rockstar using his likeness, though he could be more happy about it if Rockstar were willing to part with a small amount of money. Take a listen.
We gotta talk, GTA. We gotta talk. Or not, you gotta give me like a meal or two. So what's up? Holler at me, GTA, Rockstar Entertainment, Rockstar Games, Rockstar Enterprise. Florida Joker ain't having that. Y'all took my likeness. Y'all took my life. Look,
So there you have it, $1 or $2 million, and Florida Joker is a happy camper. Not too much to ask for, right? I don't think so. In fact, I'm all but certain that Rockstar's lawyers are writing this man a check as we speak. And by check, I mean they're probably going to sue him for even thinking about asking for money, so best of luck to you, Florida Joker. You're definitely going to need it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are done for the week. Like I said, do expect the day before video very soon. I have been playing it. I'm hesitant to call it a game because that feels unfair to the word game. Outside of that, I hope you enjoyed yourself in this video. If you did, then do remember to hit the like button, slap the subscribe button, and headbutt the notification bell. It makes a nice sound when you do that. We've got one more proper news show left for the year before we do our end of year news wrap up. Will I recommend 2023? I don't know, to be honest. This year's been pretty crazy. That's a problem for another day though. For now, thank you as always for stopping by, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Eureka Ergonomic. Alright, well, Eureka Ergonomics' takeover of my home and office continues. Both Austin and I are rocking their excellent standing desks. I just upgraded to one of their chairs, more on that later in the video. You might also have seen the new coffee table, which doubles as a sneaky fridge. This is literally my favorite piece of furniture that I've ever owned, no word of a lie. But this week, I just got one new addition to the office, and it's this bad boy, the Eureka Ergonomic Display Cabinet. See, if you're anything like me, then you've got a few collectibles laying around. Too many, in fact. Many of them have to sit in boxes or be given away to friends, but some of them make the cut, earning coveted shelf space. Well, now that shelf space just got a big upgrade because the Curio display cabinet not only has plenty of room for some of your favorite stuff, but it also features adjustable LED lighting. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't make your collectibles come to life, sadly, but it does look cool, and it's just a really striking way to profile some of your favorite stuff, be it figurines, old handheld, Blu-ray box sets, books, or whatever else you're particularly proud of. The Curio display cabinet comes in two different size options and features anti-scratch wood and aluminium frames. It's super easy to put together, and the cable management is very clean, remains entirely hidden behind the unit. It's also got a companion app allowing you to control the lighting remotely and even set timers for when it turns on or off. It's the perfect example of what Eureka are all about. They make furniture, but for people who like a bit of technology snuck in there. The coffee table is another example. I mean, this thing is a table, a fridge, a wireless charger, and even a Bluetooth speaker. Eureka understands that we're a different generation, and we want our furniture to come with technology that is clever and convenient. That's what sets Eureka apart, and I really recommend checking out their product lineup because there's sure to be something in there that you'll like. To do that, visit eurekaergonomic.com/skillup, and if you do that soon, you'll be in luck because Eureka Ergonomic are currently offering holiday deals with discounts up to 58% off some of their best products. That is the lowest price of the year by far. This is a limited time offer, so be sure to check it out. There are financing options available as well if you'd like to pay in installments instead of all up front, but do note that conditions apply. The holiday sale is strictly for a limited time, so you better get in quick. That's eurekaergonomic.com/skillup. Thanks Eureka for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.